Hello, fourth grade. This week we're going to be focusing some more on the gold rush and we're going to be doing a booklet about it. So I've attached more than one thing in your Google Classroom assignment. I have the actual assignment over here that says the Gold Rush booklet and tells you pages 11 to 14, but I've also attached the station materials. So the station materials is what you're going to use to be able to complete your work in your Gold Rush Center booklet. Now, what I recommend you do when you open and download it is to do it like this, to open them in two separate screens. I know generally when they open, they're going to be kind of stuck together like that. What you can do is you can pull that tab out and line it up so that it's a split screen like this. So you'll have your station materials on one side of your screen, your Gold Rush Center booklet on the other side of your screen, and that way you can view both while you're working. You don't have to switch back and forth. Now, before we get started, I wanted to show you what I have set up for you in Google Classroom. So right now in Google Classroom, what you're going to see when you go to current assignments, if you want to see it like this, where everything's expanded and easy to read, instead of just going to classwork, you're going to press on current assignments, and then it will open everything up for you in an expanded form like this. Now, there's a couple things in here. The first thing you're going to see is our materials. So you're going to see materials that talk about your Gold Rush project that's going to be due next week. That's right here. If you hover over it, you'll see it says Gold Rush Final Project and Rubric. There's a Gold Rush video in here that I'm going to play for you in just a second. And then there's another video about gold mining or gold panning. So this is what they used to do during the Gold Rush, where they would look in these streams to see if there's little gold flecks or gold pieces in them, and it shows you how to do it. Underneath, we have the two things that I just showed you, the booklet and the station materials. And then down here, we have another item, and that's going to be for Station 4, you have to write a paragraph and create a sign for the place that you claimed as your territory. So this is what that's going to look like. You're going to have room for your full name and date. You're going to take a picture of the sign that you made and paste it in right here. I did put directions on how to get your picture pasted in right here. So what you would do once you've taken your picture, you're going to go down into this area and you're going to press Insert, Image. And if you save the picture on your computer, you're going to press Upload from your computer. If you saved it on your Google Drive, you can press Google Drive and it'll pull up your Google Drive for you to find it. So that's where you're going to do that. So number one is the sign. Number two is the paragraph writing for Station 4. So I gave you a nice big text box here for you to write in all of your information. Directions are right there. Please make sure you're using complete sentences. You're checking your spelling and your sentence structure. Okay, this needs to be fourth grade quality work. It can't be something that you rush through. So please take your time and do it carefully and correctly. I already set everything up for you. Your writing in here is going to be double spaced, so you don't have to worry about changing don't change any of the fonts or the sizes on anything. Just fill in your information, and that way we can get through it. All right, so the first thing I'm going to show you guys before we get started is a short video about the California Gold Rush in cartoon form. So this one's a little bit more interesting than the one we watched last week.
The California Gold Rush. Gold was first discovered in California by James W. Marshall at Sutter's Mill near the city of Coloma, California. The story goes back to 1848. James was building a sawmill for John Sutter when he saw something shining in the river. They both tested the metal. It was gold. Soon, the word got out. It was no longer a secret. Not many Americans lived in California, but that soon changed. By 1849, thousands upon thousands of people arrived in search of gold. The journey to California was dangerous. Some would go by sea from the East Coast, or on land along the California Trail. These people would become known as the 49ers. One way to find gold was to pan for it. Miners would sink the pan into the water and shake the dirt away to reveal any gold. Miners needed a lot of equipment, including a mining pan, a shovel, a pick, and food supplies. Businesses who sold this equipment to the miners often became richer than the miners could ever be themselves. Wherever gold or silver was discovered, miners would move in and set up camp. These would often grow into boom towns, which would become deserted once all the gold opportunities had dried up. So, was the gold rush worth it? Some became wealthy, but most returned home empty-handed. Subscribe to see more fun history videos. Get Simple History, the Wild West, today.
Okay, so that takes us through that video. We also have the video on gold panning. So I'm going to play part of this for you guys. It is a little bit long and it's very repetitive. So I'm going to play the first bit for you. There is the link to the full video if you do want to watch it all the way through. But this gives you an idea of how they used to pan for gold.
Okay, so today we're going to be looking at panning. Now it's important when you are panning to get the right level of water. So what we're going to do first is just bring the material towards the front and drain the water. Then what we're going to do is just very lightly dip it into the water and drain off the top material. Now you want to do this maybe 3, maybe 4 times at most. Once you've done that, then we'll pick up the water again, bring it back, and bring it to what's known as stratifying. So we just shake it about so you get everything flows nice and neatly together. And again, we'll tip off the water, bring it to roughly the second riffle, empty out all of the water, and again, lightly dip. We want all the light stuff on the top to float out. So again, 3 or 4 times. We'll pick it up again. A bit more water this time. Again, stratify it, shake it up a bit. Again, dip out all the water. Dunk it. Okay, again, stratify again. So we'll bring it to the second riffle there. Let all the water drain out. Okay, and again, bring it back. Now because there's less material, we don't need as much water. So again, we'll stratify it a little bit there. And as all you can do, if you look at my wrist there, all I'm doing is just literally shaking it back and forth so you get the water gets that kind of bubble effect there. Just kind of waves. And again, bring it forward so we get it to the second riffle. Tip out all the water and just gently bring it down into the water. And all we want to do is to allow all the light material move over. Okay. Then again, we'll bring it back again. We just keep continuing this process until we get down to the very, very small material.
All right, so that gives you an idea of how they would do gold panning. So they would have some of the dirt and things in their pan, and they would fill it with water and kind of shake off the loose bits, because gold was generally a heavier material, so it would sink towards the bottom. It wouldn't be some of the stuff that would float and run off. Now let's go ahead and go over your Gold Rush Center booklet. Now this is fairly self-explanatory. I'm not going to go through it in great detail. I will go through the directions with you and tell you how to go through and answer and find your answers. And then you'll be able to work independently. Now, generally, if we were in class, this is something that you would do with a small group, but since we're all working remotely right now, each person is going to be doing it independently. So for station 1, we're looking at primary and secondary sources. The instructions say, look at the photographs, paintings, and documents, sort them into two categories, primary sources and secondary sources, then write the numbers. Now over here, before we start, you get a bit of an introduction or a review on what is considered a primary source and what is considered a secondary source. Now we use both of these to learn about the past and give us an idea of what was going on in a previous time, what life was like, maybe what tools they used, things like that. So a primary source provides firsthand evidence about an event, and this can be an autobiography that somebody wrote about something that happened during their lifetime, diary entries, personal letters, interviews, photographs, pictures, any art that was created by a witness, so someone who watched it happen, a quote from a witness, a newspaper article that was written by a witness, or any kind of artifact from that time period. So an example is this quote, "Gold, gold, gold from the American River." And this was said by Samuel Brennan running through San Francisco with gold dust in 1848. So this is a quote from someone during that time period. So that makes it a primary source. Now, secondary sources are secondhand accounts. So it's when you're hearing it from somebody else. You weren't there yourself, someone who was there told you about it. So a biography, right, the story about somebody else's life, a newspaper article written by someone who was not there, art created by someone who was not there, a textbook. So things that came after or from people who were not physically present, they didn't actually see it with their own eyes or hear it with their own ears or say it with their own mouths. Those are considered secondary sources. So the California Gold Rush was the largest mass migration in American history. And this is from historynet.com. So all of these things that come afterwards, after that event, are considered secondary sources. Anything that's coming from that time, from someone who was actually there, is considered a primary source. Now, you're going to look at a lot of different primary and secondary sources, and you're going to decide which category they fit into. And all you're going to be doing over here in the text boxes in your station booklet is you're going to put the numbers of those things. So please make sure you put a comma and a space between your numbers. Don't just write all your numbers consecutively back to back. So for number 1, over here we have a map. You're going to decide if that's a primary or secondary source. If it looks like something that was made during that time period, or it looks like something that was made after, you're going to decide where it goes. This photograph, over here, this advertisement or photograph, all of these, you're going to go through them, and there's several of them. So I do want you to go through, look at them carefully, read through them. If you're not sure, go back and look at what makes a primary source and what makes a secondary source. And then you can sort these different things into those categories. So there's 11 items that you're going to split into these areas. Put the numbers of the primary sources in the primary box, put the numbers of the things that you think are secondary sources in the secondary box. After that, you're going to go on to station 2. Now for station 2, they want you to create a comic strip that shows what you learned in station 2 and then scan and upload it as an attachment to this assignment. So I know you're not going to be able to do it physically in here, but attach it to Google Classroom as part of your assignment. Now for station 2, you have a passage to read right here about what was the gold rush. It's only about a page. And it gives you your instructions for how to do your comic strip right here. So it's just the 1 page of reading. It's not much. You're going to go through that and complete your comic strip. For station number 3, how did they get to California? What you're going to be doing here is you're going to trace the 3 routes to California from the East Coast. The Oregon Trail, you're going to use red. The Panama shortcut, you're going to use blue. And for green, you're going to trace the route around Cape Horn. So read through the station 3 material over here. Each one of these gives you the route and how they got there, so you'll be able to trace it on the map of how they got from the East Coast over to the West Coast. For station 4, this is what we were talking about earlier. you are going to be claiming an area, and you're going to create a sign to show that that's your mining claim, right? That's your land that you've claimed, and you're going to write about it. So you're going to read through the Gold Rush Station 4 material, A Miner's Life. And then over on this side, you're going to be putting a name for your mining company right here. So come up with something creative. You're going to create a sign for your mining company, and you're going to write a paragraph about it. And that was the document that I showed you in the beginning. For Station 5, Immigrants in the Gold Rush, we're going to be looking at what we call push factors and pull factors. So push factors are things that push you away from your home, things that make you want to leave where you're currently living. Pull factors are the things that are really exciting in the new area that make you want to go there. So if you're looking at a place that has really great job opportunities, beautiful homes to live in, lots of beautiful scenery and nature, lots of things to do and places to go, those are pull factors, right? Those are things that make you want to go to that place. Push factors are things, again, that push you away from the place that you're in. Maybe you're living in a place that's really expensive, it's really crowded, there's nowhere to go. Maybe the people aren't very nice. These are things that push you away from the area that you're in. So you're going to read through your Station 5 material over here about immigrants in the gold rush. And for these different groups, you're going to list the push and pull factors for each one of the immigrant groups. So for Mexicans, for African Americans, for the Chinese, for people coming from Ireland, for the Irish, you're going to list their push factors and their pull factors, and please label it. So if you're writing about the Mexicans, you're going to write Mexico or Mexicans, and then list their push factors, and Mexicans and their pull factors. Once you get to African Americans, you're going to write African American and then write their push factor and their pull factor. So label them accordingly. As you go through onto Station 6, we're going to be talking about the Native Americans. So in 1850, laws were passed that were very bad for Native Americans. The Act for the Government and Protection of Indians. This act stated that, that a court would hear complaints from both Indians and non-Indians, but in no case shall a white man be convicted on any offense upon the testimony of an Indian. So what does that mean? This act, this was something that was passed that said that we will hear out everybody's complaints, right? If you're Native American or you're not Native American, if you're an immigrant, so one of the people who came to the land versus the people who live there, the Native Americans, this court will hear both sides of the story, but they're not going to punish an immigrant based on the complaint of a Native American, which basically says the Native Americans will almost never get their way if there is some kind of disagreement or dispute. So you can see why this would be really bad for them. So in 1850, that law was passed, which for obvious reasons is not in favor of Native Americans, because it means they never really get to win. So even if they have a claim, they're saying something that's true, that actually happened. If they're saying that something bad was done to them or to their land or to their people by what they consider a non-Indian, then they're not going to punish that person. And then there's the Indian Indenture Act of 1850, and this stated that Native Americans, mostly Indian youth, so the younger generations, could be arrested and made into slaves for landowners. So if they decided, if any of these immigrants, right, came in and decided that you were doing something that they didn't really like, they could arrest you and make you a slave on their land. Now we're going to take a look at the graph from Station 6 and figure out, what do you notice about the numbers? What do you think it had to do with the laws mentioned above? Okay, so we're going to take a look at this graph, and the title of our graph here is Native American Population in California, and we're going to be looking at this period where of the gold rush, which was between 1848 and 1855. So we're looking at right between here and midway through. Now, what are the things that happened during this time period of the gold rush? you'll see that there was an increase in disease. So new diseases that were brought from the immigrants spread throughout the state. And those diseases decreased the population of Native Americans because they would catch these illnesses and these diseases and pass away from them. There was a lack of food. The miners panning for gold made the stream really dirty, and that killed a lot of the fish that were living in those streams. And miners also killed deers and birds for their own food. So this population was in the area and they were using the resources that the Native Americans were using previously, and then there wasn't enough. There was also migration. So Native Americans were forced to move to faraway reservations along with some of the enemy tribes because these new immigrants were here and they were taking over these areas. So the Native American tribes were actually pushed out, and some of them were pushed towards enemy tribes. So other tribes of Native Americans they did not get along with. And there was also the issue of slavery. So in 1850, the Indian Indenture Act was passed, and we read about this, and it stated that the Native Americans who were not on a reservation or working for a white person would be arrested and become slaves for landowners. So this gives a little more detail about it. And this was usually focused more towards the youth. So young adults, people who were young and strong and able to work on them, those are the people that they targeted the most. There was also a lack of defense because Native Americans had no way to protect themselves. They didn't have an army. And then, unfortunately, there was also murder. So many Native Americans were killed by white people. So what you're going to do in your station, for Station 6 in your center booklet, is you're going to look at this graph, and you're going to take a look and note here on the lines using complete sentences what you notice is going on. So what do you think it has to do with the laws that were mentioned above? These laws were passed in 1850. So take a look at 1850 onward and see what do you think those different laws caused to happen with the population of Native Americans. So that's going to take you to the end of the actual stations. The final project is also listed under the materials in Google Classroom. So we can head back over there and we can go into Google Classroom. And up here in the beginning, you're going to see the final project and rubric. So this is not due yet. This is going to be due next week, but it does give you directions on how to do it step by step. It gives you every little thing you need to do. It also gives you a rubric so you know exactly how to earn all of your points. Now I'm going to be doubling these points. So this is going to be out of 30, not out of 15. So please make sure you go through all of these tasks very carefully. Make sure you're doing them as best as you can and that you're writing with your best handwriting if you're going to write it out. If you're going to type it, that's fine as well. Make sure you're paying attention to your spelling, your handwriting, your grammar, your sentence structure, all of these things. It needs to be written at a 4th grade level. So please make sure you put in your best effort. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have an amazing week. Take care, 4th grade. Bye-bye.